Welcome back, everyone, to Cheddar.
Uber has been forced to cease operations in Colombia. To break all of this down, we're joined by Dara Kerr. She is senior reporter at CNET. Dara, how damaging is Uber's first Latin American exit?
Yeah, this is the first time we're seeing Uber have to be forced out of a country due to regulatory measures. We saw them being pulled out of London, but that was for safety considerations, and they're still on the roads in London. So this is a big deal. Colombia was the first country in South America that Uber entered, and so it's now the first country that it's left.
Well, compare and contrast this, right, to the other big exits that we've seen, Southeast Asia, Russia, and the huge one, of course, China.
Yeah. Well, in those countries, Uber was trying to start its own business, and competitors bought out its business. So it was more a partnership, and it got a big chunk of those deals. In Colombia, it's very different. This is because of a regulatory battle with the government.
And we've been talking about this earlier, the reasons why Uber kind of got criticized initially, but why do you think investors were so critical off bat?
Sorry, critical about what?
About Uber from the start.
Sorry, I'm not sure the timing. What could you just tell me the criticisms? I'm not sure about which.
Sure.
Yeah.
General question here. Why do you think, in your opinion, investors were so critical of Uber from the very beginning?
You mean when Uber's launched in 2009 or?
Correct.
Oh, well, because, it's the same. I mean, I think one of the reasons is there's this same whole deal of why it's being forced out of Colombia is because it's competing unfairly, allegedly, with the taxi business. And the taxi business has always been something that's struggled. And so how are you going to monetize that kind of business?
Yeah, I mean, and London, right? Let's not forget what's happening there. I mean, technically speaking, they're being investigated still, right? And the potential ban might be permanent. And London is one of their top 5 markets. Do you think this sets a bad precedent then for London taxi authorities to also take the same action that we've seen here in Colombia?
Yeah, I mean, London is scrutinizing issues with Uber that are a bit different. That's what happened in Colombia. Colombia, it seems really about unfair competition with taxis, whereas London's really taking a critical look at safety with Uber. It's found, fraudulent drivers on the platform. It's found sexual assaults that haven't been reported. But again, it is showing that these government regulators are taking a closer look at these app-based companies.
Yeah, and I think, just last point on this, and I think you raised a really good point, Dara, is that you have different countries being concerned about different things. Uber's business is so big that, it's going to be hard for Uber to answer all of these individual kinds of issues that are so different, to your point. I want to go really quickly to Mexico. Uber freezing 240 accounts there after flagging a possible case of the coronavirus. I mean, this is pretty serious.
Yeah, and what's really interesting to me in this is that we haven't seen any confirmed cases of the coronavirus yet in Mexico. And this is kind of the first step that we're seeing of the virus in that country. And supposedly the Mexican authorities alerted Uber to an individual passenger who may have been carrying the virus.
In your opinion, why would someone choose to invest in Lyft over Uber?
I can't really say, my opinion since I'm a reporter, but I would say that Lyft has a lot less regulatory scrutiny because it's mostly just in the United States. I mean, it's in Canada also, but Uber is everywhere. So it just has a lot more oversight to deal with.
Right. And, for a lot of the investors that are looking at this too, I think they look at this as a different kind of company, right? Uber, it's like so much more. And it's, I think in the AB5 right fight, it's about this idea of, are you a platform? Are you a driving service? And Uber has vehemently, and some of these other companies that employ contractors say that no, like we're a marketplace, right? I mean, so from that perspective, do you think that argument is going to hold water? They're spending millions of dollars to fight against AB5 in California.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and also if you compare what Lyft is doing and Uber is doing, Lyft is kind of sitting back and apparently having backroom talks with unions and that kind of stuff, where Uber is really making concrete changes to the app to try and prove that it isn't an employer of drivers.
Hmm.
And it's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out over the next year and how California regulators really look at the two apps and what they're doing.
All right, never a dull day in Uberland. Dara, thank you so much for being on with us. She is a senior reporter over at CNET. Thanks again.